You ever have a fear so deep, so persistent, that even as an adult, it still lingers? Maybe it was a shadow in the corner of your childhood room, a creaking floorboard when no one else was home, a door you never dared to open. Most fears fade with time, but some never leave. Some just wait, patiently, silently, for you to come back. I grew up in a quiet house on the edge of town, the kind of place where the walls carried memories and the floors whispered at night. It wasn't a big house, nothing fancy, just a home filled with the usual sounds of life. Distant laughter, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of old wood settling. At least, that's what my mother used to say. She had an answer for everything. Every odd noise, every unexplained sound, just the house settling. Or mice. That was her favorite excuse. Mice. As if tiny creatures could make the kind of noises I heard. As if mice could scratch in a slow, deliberate way, almost thoughtful. The pantry was the worst. A narrow, heavy door at the end of the hallway, its paint cracked with age, its hinges rusted from years of disuse. We never really needed to go in there. My mother kept the dry goods in the kitchen cabinets, so the pantry became more of a forgotten space, a storage closet for things we didn't need anymore. I never questioned why we rarely opened it. I was too busy avoiding it. During the day, it was easy to ignore. Just another door in an old house. But at night, that was when it came alive. I remember lying in bed, blankets pulled up to my chin, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it. The scratching. Light at first, almost gentle, like nails running along the wood. Then a pause. A silence that felt too intentional, like whatever was behind that door was listening. Waiting to see if I had noticed. And I always noticed. I told my mother once. I still remember how she smiled, that tired, patient smile mothers have when they think their child is just looking for attention. "It's an old house, sweetheart," she said, brushing my hair back. "Old houses make noises. And if it's mice, well, they're more scared of you than you are of them." I didn't argue. What was the point? She wasn't the one lying awake every night, listening. She wasn't the one who had to run past the pantry whenever she got up for a glass of water, heart pounding, convinced, absolutely convinced, that if she slowed down, if she hesitated for even a second, the door would creak open just a little. Just enough. I never tested that theory. Over time, I did what kids do best. I convinced myself it was nothing. Just my imagination. Just a silly childhood fear that would go away when I got older. And it worked. For a while. Until I had to come back. Years passed. Life moved on. I grew up, moved away, built a life that had nothing to do with that house. I didn't think about it much. Not really. Childhood fears have a way of shrinking when you put enough distance between yourself and them. I even convinced myself that if I ever went back, it would all feel silly, just an old memory that didn't hold any weight anymore. Then my mother passed. And suddenly, the house was mine. Walking through the front door after all those years, I expected something. Nostalgia, grief, maybe even comfort. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt none of that. Just emptiness. Like the house had been waiting too long for someone to come back, and now it barely remembered how to be a home. Everything looked the same, yet different. The furniture, the walls, the old picture frames still clinging to memories that no longer felt like mine. But there was no warmth, no life. Just stillness. And cold. A kind of cold that had nothing to do with the weather outside. And then, there it was. The pantry. Exactly where it had always been, exactly as I had left it. The same heavy door. The same peeling paint. The same feeling pressing against my back when I walked past it, that familiar itch between my shoulder blades, like I was being watched. I told myself it was just habit, an old fear resurfacing because the place felt strange without my mother in it. I even laughed a little under my breath, shaking my head. And then night came. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, just like I used to. The air felt heavier than I remembered, the silence stretching too long between each creak of the house settling. I listened to the wind outside, the occasional tick of the radiator, the distant sound of a car passing down the road. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. And then I heard it. A scratch. Soft. Deliberate. Right where it had always been. I stopped breathing. My body went rigid, every inch of me suddenly aware of the room, the house, the space just beyond my door. Another scratch. Longer this time. It was the same sound. Exactly the same. Unchanged by time, untouched by the years I had been gone. As if it had never stopped. As if it had only been waiting. For me. I don't know how long I lay there, listening. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. The sound didn't come again, but I could still feel it. The weight of it. The knowing. I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't supposed to be scared of things like this. And yet, I could feel that same familiar fear curling around my ribs, pressing into my chest. I needed to see it. I needed to prove to myself that there was nothing there. Slowly, I pushed back the covers and set my feet on the cold floor. My body resisted every step, muscles tight, breath shallow. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and still. The pantry door stood at the end, waiting. With each step, my heartbeat climbed higher. The floor creaked beneath me, soft and sharp in the quiet. The house felt different at night, too empty, too open. Like it was holding something in its lungs, waiting to exhale. I reached the pantry, stood in front of it. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Just silence. I took a slow breath and turned the knob. The door groaned open. Inside, the same shelves, the same cans, the same dust settled in the corners. Everything exactly as I remembered it. But something felt wrong. The air was heavier here, the kind that settles thick at the back of your throat. I stepped inside, letting the dim beam of my flashlight skim across the shelves. Nothing was out of place. Nothing should have been frightening. And then, there. A line. Thin. Almost invisible along the back wall. A seam where there shouldn't be one. I swallowed hard. Moved closer. Reached out, fingers pressing against the wood. It was solid, but not quite. There was a give, a shift. My breath caught. This wasn't just a wall. It was a door. A hidden door. And it was meant to be opened. The air that spilled from the opening was thick, heavy. It carried a scent I couldn't quite name, something old, something forgotten. My flashlight quivered in my grip, the beam dancing unsteadily along the edges of the hidden space beyond the panel. The walls inside were rough, unfinished, covered in years of dust. The silence was unbearable. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your skin, made your ears ring, made your mind reach for explanations before your eyes could confirm them. I stepped closer. Just a little. Just enough to see. The light flickered. I swallowed hard, angling the beam lower, deeper into the passage. And then I saw it. A shape. Not quite a shadow, not quite solid. Something there. My breath caught in my throat. Long, thin. Fingers. Pale against the darkness. Motionless. Curled just slightly, as if waiting to grasp. My stomach turned. The flashlight trembled. The scratching. All those years. It had never been mice. It had been this. Waiting. Watching. And now. It knew I had found it. If you're still with me, take a second to subscribe to Eerie Short and Scary Stories. Because trust me, this is only the beginning. It moved before I could react. A sudden, ice-cold grip closed around my wrist, thin fingers locking on with impossible strength. The shock hit first, a jolt of disbelief before the terror crashed over me like a wave. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, a raw, animal panic surging through me. I screamed. Loud. Desperate. I yanked back with everything I had, muscles straining, heart hammering so hard it felt like my ribs would crack. But the grip held firm, tightening, pulling. It was real. It was real. I twisted, kicked, my free hand scrabbling against the floor, against the edge of the pantry door, anything to get away. My foot caught against a shelf. A burst of pain shot up my leg, but I didn't care. I shoved back, throwing my weight into it. And suddenly, release. I fell hard, my back hitting the floor, my breath tearing from my lungs in ragged gasps. The flashlight skittered away, spinning wildly, its beams slicing through the dark in frantic, erratic bursts. I scrambled up, hands shaking, pulse roaring in my ears. The pantry door, still open. The hidden passage, a yawning black void. I lunged forward and slammed it shut. Silence. For half a second, just silence. Then, scratching. Loud. Furious. It raked against the wood, fast, desperate, the sound clawing at my ears, drilling into my skull. It wanted out, and it knew I was here. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember how I got to my car. 1 second, I was inside that house, and the next, I was tearing down the driveway, gravel spraying under my tires. The engine roared, my hands shaking so badly on the wheel that I could barely keep the car steady. My breath came in short, broken gasps, my chest tight, my mind screaming one thing. Go, go, go. But the sound. It didn't stay behind. Even as I sped down the empty road, even as the house shrank in my rearview mirror, it was still there. Scratching. Not from the pantry, not from inside the house, but inside my head. Deep in my ears. I could feel it, like nails scraping the inside of my skull. I turned the radio up. Louder. Louder. Static. A song. A DJ's voice. None of it mattered. The scratching bled through. I drove for hours. I don't remember where. I don't remember stopping. At some point, exhaustion won. My body gave out, my mind shutting down in sheer survival. I must have slept. Maybe in the car. Maybe in some cheap roadside motel. I don't know. I just know I never went back. I should have burned that house down. I should have made sure that thing never touched another soul. But I didn't. I couldn't. I told myself I would never look back. That I would pretend it never happened. And for a while, I almost believed I could. Years passed. The house became a memory I refused to acknowledge. I built a new life, far away, in a place where no one had ever heard of that house, where no one knew my name. I told myself it was over, until curiosity got the better of me. One night, I typed the address into a real estate site. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see it still sitting there, abandoned, forgotten. Maybe I needed proof that it was just a house, just wood and nails and peeling wallpaper. It wasn't. It had been sold. Someone else lived there now. And in the property description, buried at the bottom of the listing, was one line that sent ice through my veins. Previous owner reported occasional noises from the pantry. House has since been fully inspected. No issues found. No issues found. The scratching never stopped. So if you ever hear something behind a door that should be empty, never open it. Some things are meant to stay locked away. You're still here, listening, thinking, wondering. Maybe you're sitting in your room, the lights low, a quiet hum from your phone or computer filling the space. Maybe you're alone. Maybe you aren't. Either way, you feel it, don't you? That little prickling sensation on the back of your neck. Like something watching. It's probably nothing. Probably. Maybe you'll shake it off. Maybe you'll laugh. Tell yourself it's just a story. Just words. But later, when the house is quiet, when the world is still, and you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling, will you hear it? A sound. Like faint. From just outside your room. A scratch. It's probably just the house settling. Maybe a branch against the window. Maybe the pipes shifting. Or maybe, well, sleep well tonight. And before you do, check your pantry. Just in case. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales that linger long after the lights go out, make sure to subscribe to Eerie Short and Scary Stories. New nightmares are waiting. You wouldn't want to miss them.